Hello and welcome to Showcase, coming to you from our studios here in Istanbul. We begin today's show by taking a look at the life and legacy of the man best known for visually capturing the heartbeat of this great city. Dubbed the Eye of Istanbul, legendary Turkish-Armenian photographer Ara Guler has died of heart failure at the age of 90. For 3/4 of a century, armed mostly with a Leica camera, Guler not only documented the rapidly changing face of Istanbul, but photographed everyone from world leaders like Indira Gandhi and Winston Churchill to artists and auteurs like Marc Chagall and Alfred Hitchcock. His timeless black and white images will forever bear witness to a world seen through the unique and discerning lens of an Istanbulite with a global eye.
He loved Istanbul, and Istanbul loved him back.
Herkes bana İstanbul'un gözü der.
Ara Guler dedicated his life to capturing the spirit of one of the most beautiful cities in the world. The Turkish-Armenian photojournalist was born in Istanbul in 1928. Using his father's connections, he landed his first job as an assistant film projector, but soon abandoned cinema in favor of photojournalism. Güler's career kicked off at a local newspaper, but he went on to work for some of the top magazines of the world, from Time Life to Stern. He traveled on assignment to many parts of the world and photographed artists such as Sofia Loren, Pablo Picasso, Salvador Dali, and Alfred Hitchcock.
Hatırlıyor musun çekilme anını?
Tabii ki hatırlıyorum. O kadar aptal mıyım?
Many people consider Güler's work as art, but he never agreed with that because for him, art could easily lie, while photography can only reflect reality.
The photography is something you with the other people, and then the other people what is thinking about you is very complicated.
He described himself as a visual historian, and that's exactly what people will remember him as.
Ara Guler has received numerous awards, including France's Légion d'honneur, and given the title of Turkey's Photographer of the Century. His images hang in galleries from Paris to New York, while his mark on the visual arts reaches even further. Those images have resonated with fans around the world, and here in Istanbul, with many of them gathering together in a place where the photographer spent a lot of time, near the street named after him, in a place bedecked with his work.
The mood is somber here today at Ara Café on Istanbul's Istiklal Street. It is here where Ara Guler would come and hang out, have a coffee, and talk photography. And the location was convenient as his studio was right above. I spoke to a few people today to find out how they'll remember the renowned Turkish photographer.
20 yaşındayım ben.
I'm 20 years old. He's basically like a teacher who showed us the old Istanbul, which is something I don't have the chance to see today. And I live in the Anatolian part of the city, which is across the Bosphorus. And I came here today just to pay tribute to him. It's truly a very emotional day for me.
We are film directors with my sister, and we're making cartoons, and photography is like part of our life. So coming here in Istanbul, we found out about this place, and we're here 1 week, but we didn't have time to visit this place, and we thought, okay, maybe the last day we're here we should visit it, and we learned this news, so we were a little bit late, but we saw his photography, and he's a great artist, and for us he's a big professional.
Yes, he's like the legend, and we are really fans of his art, and we are late, yes, because from St. Petersburg, because we live in St. Petersburg. I googled, and it was like my aim to come here and to speak to him, and maybe to see his photos. I don't know. Yeah, we're a bit late.
He knew many people here. The cafe was in a way his home. He had his office upstairs, but he preferred hanging out here. He used to bring his photographs and documents downstairs to the cafe and work here at his favorite spot. Ara Guler was on the set once of Turkish director Cem Yılmaz's 2006 movie The Magician. The crew was filming the most dramatic scene of the film. In the scene, Cem Yılmaz, also starring in the film, was in a tank full of water, and he had to hold his breath for a long time. We had a set photographer with us that day, but it turned out that he could not capture the climactic moment of the film. But Ara Guler captured it, even though he did not come on set to take photographs. So yeah, he was that kind of a man.
As people continue to make their way to the Ara Café, Showcase Arts reporter Adil Halim got a chance to sit down with one of them who had a special connection to Ara Guler. They spoke about Güler's travels, his famous friends, and one of the photographer's accidental discoveries.
Ara Guler's work represents much of what we know of Istanbul through the mid-20th century. Right now I'm joined by a close friend of his, also photographer, Coskun Aral. Coskun, I know this is a very difficult time for you. Tell us about the emotions that are going through your mind right now.
I was in London yesterday, and as my plane touched down on the way back, I turned on my phone and calls started pouring in because Ara had to be admitted into ICU twice. He was on life support, and I rushed to the hospital. 5 or 10 minutes later, I learned that he'd passed away. This is a big loss for me because he was one of the best masters who relayed information on where we were in the world. Many categorize him as an arts photographer, but he was a photo reporter, a press photographer, an eyewitness, and a historian. He met many creative people at his time. He also had regrets, of course. He said one day, "I wish I could have taken pictures of Albert Einstein." I first met him when I was 13 or 14 years old through the interviews he published in the Hayat magazine. After that, in 1977, I showed him the photos I had taken on Labor Day and became his apprentice. And we traveled a lot in the years after that.
He photographed famous celebrities. In 1957 at the Cannes Film Festival, he met Moravia, Picasso, the list goes on. But he also loved meeting regular people and hearing their stories. What does that tell you about the character of the man?
Thanks to him, we've seen the faces of Istanbul that do not exist today. We've seen the architecture that's not around anymore. But apart from this, he did not really want to be remembered by Istanbul. Istanbul was a part of him. The place where he was born, not far away from here, in Taksim. For example, when he met Chagall, Chagall stayed in Istanbul for 2 years together with Trotsky. Ara asked Chagall where he lived in Istanbul, and he said Büyükada. When Ara said he lived on Talimhane, Chagall was surprised and asked Ara to take some photos of the island so he could paint from them. When Winston Churchill arrived in Istanbul in 1957 on the Onassis yacht, Ara got on the boat to take photos and took Churchill the next day sightseeing in the city. And he has many stories to tell from this outing. Apart from this, politicians who led revolutions and made big changes in various countries in the world, like Yasser Arafat. When the first messages Arafat had for the world were published in Time magazine, the cover photo of Yasser was Ara Guler's. At the same time, he has photos of Zulfikar Bhutto, his daughter Benazir Bhutto, current Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir's photos of his time in the office and with his family taken 30 years ago. He did not just freeze the time in a frame like any photographer. He would tell its story as well. That is why Ara Guler was history itself.
He received his first camera when he was just 22 years old, and by the mid-1950s he had worked for many world-renowned magazines, traveling from Pakistan to Kenya to Borneo, you name it. What was it about his work that made him stand out?
Now, no photographer can take a photo like any other photographer. Yes, they can be influenced. I was influenced by him too, but I never sought to resemble him in my photography. He felt the same about his contemporaries and photographers who came before his time. He would mention them and was also a bridge between those photographers and the younger generation of today. He was the first to congratulate any Turkish photographer who received an international award. He would host them here and evaluate their works. But because he saw himself as a photo reporter, there were some terms he would not accept, like art photographer. Son, this is not art, we are mere witnesses, he would say. And he would refuse some descriptions of him. But this was his humbleness. Being an artist is important, but being a witness is much more important. He took pictures of the most important political leaders in Turkey. He would ignore criticisms. Political views may vary, and there may be discussions of whose photo to take. But he would say, I've done my historical duty. And he would be happy about it, because the message he would leave was important. The photos were what counted.
He also made a famous discovery, stumbling upon the ancient city Aphrodisias in western Turkey. How did that come about?
As a coincidence, he was deployed to record a dam construction in that region. They got lost on the way there. When the sun rose, he saw people living amongst historic ruins near a village called Karacasu. I interviewed him for a documentary of mine, and he said, I looked and saw Turkey on one side and Rome on the other. Men were playing backgammon and drinking tea on Roman altars. The excavations damaged many of the ruins, and he believed that they should not have been disturbed. He was a world traveler who wanted to witness the history of the world. He had a universal mindset. Until last week, he was alert enough to evaluate or criticize a photo he would see. He died early. For me, any death is early. There were many more things we could have learned from him.
Now, Guler was the first Turk to become a member of the American Society of Photographers, but he was also your friend and mentor. Tell me what you can tell us about him as a person.
We had similar views. I cannot compare our photos, but our language was the same. When we were bored, we would always call on each other. We used to meet just upstairs from here in his workshop. I would sometimes find him sitting in the corner saying he was punishing himself for neglecting the house whose roof was leaking. Anything that existed was valuable to him. He knew every corner of Istanbul. He knew Kuala Lumpur, Paris, and London as well. After we talked the other night, I was planning to go to the bar he liked very much. It didn't happen. And here we are today, talking about him.
Let's turn back the clocks to 1986. By then, Ara Guler was a 58-year-old photographer who had been taking pictures for more than 50 years. He loved to speak about his work almost as much as he loved to make it. Always outspoken and never one to mince words, his truthful abrasiveness was on full display in the interview you're about to see. Speaking with TRT's Doğan Hızlan, Guler makes clear the importance of documenting the world in its purest form and why photography and art should remain separate disciplines.
Eğer ben bir fotoğrafçıysam, yani bakmayı seviyorum demektir. Bu bakmayı da kaydetmek fotoğrafçının işidir. Onun için fotoğraf makinesinin benim yanımda her zaman bulunması gerekir. Benim için onun bir parçamdır yani fotoğraf makinesi. Yani fotoğraf çeken adamlar, televizyoncular, kameramenler, bütün bunlar otomatikman bir şeyi belgeliyoruz. Devrimizin bilmeden tarihini yazan adamlarız biz.
Görsel tarihini.
Görsel tarihini yazıyoruz. Eskiden tarihçiler böyle yapmazlardı. Eskiden mesela düşündüğü gibi yazabilirdi bir adam. Bir tarihçi düşündüğü, yorumunu yaptığı gibi bir kitap bırakırdı. Halbuki biz en gerçeği tarihe bırakacağız. Mesela dünyanın bu kadar yerinde sıcak harp oluyor, bir takım şeyler olmaktadır. Bunları çeken bir sürü foto muhabirleri vardır, kameramenler vardır. Bunlar tarihini yazıyorlardır. Ve 3000 senesinde bu devrimizi bilinmesi için devrimizin aynasını bırakmış oluyoruz biz yani foto muhabiri olarak. Onun için başka bir şey daha söyleyeyim. Yani fotoğrafın sanat olmasından çok daha mühimdir belgesel olması.
Peki o zaman fotoğraf bir sanat değil midir yani?
Fotoğraf sanat olsun ya da olmasın. Yani bu sanat olması ikinci derecede bir şey. Tabii bu bütün fotoğrafçılar biraz estetikten anlar, biraz dünya görüşü vardır. Öyle olan adam zaten fotoğrafçı oluyor. Bunların olması yeteri kadar sanat yapmaz yani fotoğrafçıda. Ayrıca da fotoğrafın sanat olması fotoğraf için büyük bir promosyon değildir. Sanat olması yani büyük bir şeref değildir fotoğraf için. Adam vardır mesela şuradan çıkar şuraya yürür hiçbir şey görmeden yürür. Bu adam asla fotoğrafçı olamaz. Halbuki bazı adam vardır şuradan şuraya gidinceye kadar 4 tane şey görür. Gözü görmeye alışır. Ondan sonra onu yorumlayacaktır objektifiyle. Hazırdır o adam. Fotoğrafçı hazır adamdır. Yani kovboyun tabanca çekmesi gibi bir adamdır fotoğrafçı. Fotoğraf daktilo makinesi gibidir. Senin diyecek bir lafın vardır. Onun için kalemin yatı daktilon vardır. En evvela diyecek lafın olacak. Anlatma istediğin bir şey olacak. Ondan sonra ona da hazır olacaksın. Ondan sonra diyeceğini diyeceksin. Yoksa böyle birkaç sergiyle açmakla yani şu kendileri yapıyorlar, kendileri bakıyorlar falan yani büyük halk kütlelerine hiçbir zaman ulaşmadı.
Ara Guler would often describe himself as a visual historian and placed an enormous amount of importance on the human element in his images. Argentine-Canadian anthologist and novelist Alberto Manguel captured that essence in the foreword to the book titled Ara Guler, Creating the 20th Century. And he joins me now from New York. Thanks for being with us today, Alberto. Now, one of the books you wrote was called Reading Pictures, What We Think About When We Look at Art. What do you think about Guler's insistence that his photography wasn't art?
An artist can define his work in whatever way he or she wants, including denying that it's art. Of course, for the viewer, it's different. What the artist does has a certain intention that comes from him and his context and his attitude. But for the viewer, the portraits and the scenery depicted by him is extraordinarily artistic. It has a language that's beyond pure documentary reporting. And so I would, in contradiction with him, say that it is art.
Now, why should Ara Guler be included in a book that about artists and writers that created or helped create the 20th century?
He has constructed this artistic universe from the point of the reader and the viewer that he is. Every selection that we make depends on certain parameters and circumstances that we decide. Obviously, for another person, the choice would be different. And we mustn't forget that in the case of a photographer, much depends on the circumstances. That is to say, if by chance he meets Picasso, of course he will make the portrait of Picasso, and then Picasso will become part of that panoply of artists and creators. So we mustn't discount chance. We mustn't rely too much on the intention of the artist, which is an invention of medieval rhetoric. What the artist intends is something that many times the artist itself doesn't know.
Now, at the introduction you wrote for the book, you wrote that Guler passed on to his subjects his own secret judgments. What do you think Guler's photography gave away when it came to his own personality?
That is a complicated question because we would have to look in detail at each of the portraits. It is obvious that when we look at something, even if it is through the eye of the camera, we are communicating to that something, qualities that are our own and not in the subject. The view of a face by Picasso or by Guler or by a medieval painter will obviously be different, even if it's the same face. We mustn't forget, we try to be very deterministic and say, this is caused by that, and this is the truth of what we're looking at. And instead, there are so many conflicting influences and different vocabularies that intervene, so that no artistic production can be totally innocent of the influence of the artist, and no artistic production can be entirely the work of that artist.
Tell us about your personal relationship with Ara Guler.
Well, I met him just once, a long time ago, when I was in the Topkapi library looking at manuscripts, and he was there and took my pictures. We didn't have a relationship. We didn't have even a long conversation. I admire his work enormously because he communicates to his subjects a certain ambiguity that perhaps is not in the subject, but in his judgment of the subject. And I like that very much. I like to pick up on that. But no, we unfortunately didn't have a personal relationship. I would have very much liked to have one.
Now, Alberto, is there a danger in an artist being so closely linked to a place like Ara Guler was to Istanbul that the rest of his work would be overshadowed?
No, we are all linked to a certain place, whether it is politically, geographically, or psychologically, or imaginatively. Borges was always linked to Buenos Aires, Virgil was linked to Rome, and so this, of course, influences the artist, but it simply adds words to the artist's vocabulary and allows the artist to go from that one place in the world to the rest of the universe. You have to start from somewhere, and it's just as well to start from home.
Now, Guler was a protege of Henri Cartier-Bresson, the French photographer who became famous for capturing what is often called the decisive moment. Like Bresson, Guler's focus was also on street photography. So what do you think Guler will be most known for?
I think he will be known for his portraits because, in spite of capturing the moment in the street, which is always a decisive moment in the eye of the camera, the decisive moment can happen just a minute later after the camera has closed down. But in the case of the portraits, there is a kind of biography of the subject that happens in Guler's portraits that is as well an autobiography of Guler. I think that if we put all the portraits together, we would see a composite that is none of these portraits, but the face of the artist.
Alberto, it was a pleasure having you on Showcase to speak about Ara Guler today.
Thank you.
Well, that's it on Showcase for now. We hope you enjoyed our look back at the life and legacy of legendary Turkish-Armenian photographer Ara Guler. Make sure to check out Showcase's YouTube channel for more of our coverage of the global art scene. Until next time, I'm Efnan Han. Thanks for watching.